April 26, 2026. We are in the 5th year, day 62 since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Welcome to the Situation Report. In today's report, we don't see anything from the front at all because nothing is happening. It's really hard to get any new information. Because the problem is Ukraine is not actively attacking right now. That means we don't see any attacks from the Ukrainian side. And while the Russian side is actively attacking and is in the middle of a major offensive, it's barely making any progress. And here we might see territorial gains of several hundred meters spread across the entire front. And that's happening every day. That's too small in scale to be able to mark it on the situation map here. That's why we always have to wait a bit. So I'm sorry for everyone who always expects some territorial gains. But at the moment, we don't see anything. Still, stay tuned. Ukraine has announced its own offensive for this year, which might be a bit more successful than the Russian side at the moment, or the one on the Ukrainian side back in 2023. But what we are seeing again are images from Tuapse, the oil depot that is still burning. We are seeing a lot in terms of drone technology, and what we will also see are interesting attacks and, surprisingly, no resistance. So stay tuned. New images now show quite clearly what was actually hit in Tuapse. We haven't been able to see anything for the past few days because there was still black smoke over the facility, so we couldn't make anything out. We couldn't detect any damage because the smoke was just too thick. But now we can see that not only was the refinery itself hit in the strict sense, but rather everything around it. Tank farms, pumping stations, pipelines. In the end, the entire loading infrastructure. Basically, exactly the things that make sure the oil even gets in, and most importantly, out again. And that's exactly the problem for the Russian side now. Not just one spot was damaged, but several spots at the same time. Tanks were damaged, pipelines were cut, pumps failed. On top of that, the rail loading facilities, the infrastructure that moves oil to and from the Tuapse oil loading port by train, were also damaged. And if that's not working, then nothing goes in or out. The actual processing facilities might theoretically still be intact, but that doesn't help if no oil is coming in and nothing can be transported out. Meanwhile, workers are trying to reduce the heavy oil pollution in the Black Sea by collecting whatever they can with shovels. Now, this really is the Black Sea, as you can see in the background. And all this while residents are still complaining that you can't go on vacation here anymore and that oil is raining from the sky every day. Likewise, a drone attack is underway on the oil refinery near Yaroslav. The facility is one of the largest in the country, with an annual capacity of nearly 15.7 million tons. The front is about 700 kilometers away. Several impacts were reported, but damage details remain unclear since it is still burning. Take a look here at the kill markings on a Ukrainian helicopter. Like many others, it was used for drone defense and had so many kills that they had to switch to tally marks because the drone pictograms became too large to fit. Before you start counting the kills on the screen, I've already done it for you. There are 185 visible kills in the picture. That's pretty interesting. Helicopters are still used for drone defense, especially against the somewhat slower flying Shahed drones. They have proven themselves very effective in the past, which of course should also provide some incentive in this country. To expand the helicopter fleet a bit, or above all, to prepare the helicopter fleet for these dangers that could possibly affect us in the future, regardless of whether they come from Russia, Iran, or other actors. Helicopters are especially relevant for this task, as you can see. A German martyr in the hands of the Ukrainian army is driving down a road when suddenly its track breaks. After that, it flips over. Shout out to our tank drivers out there. What did the driver do wrong? I assume that's what caused it to break. Drifting off the road and then flipping over, which happened as a result, was the driver's fault and not caused by the track breaking. That's how I understood it, at least. However, I'm not completely sure myself, so feel free to write it in the comments. In the area around Huliaipol, a Russian troop transport vehicle was directly attacked and hit by a Ukrainian FPV drone. Footage shows the truck, which was carrying 11 people. The drone hit the cargo area directly, and that's exactly why, dear viewers, you don't drive around in a truck full of people in known drone zones. That just makes sense. Because honestly, no matter if they're Ukrainians, Russians, or anyone else, If I'm deploying my soldiers in a drone threat area, which I know has drones, I would space them out with enough distance. The enemy would need at least 11 drones to eliminate everyone, but if you spread out, 1 or 2 might escape. But cramming everyone onto a single truck bed just to send them down a road where it's already known what's going to happen, basically sending them knowingly to their deaths, that's something we mostly see on the Russian side. A ground drone evacuated a 77-year-old woman from a gray zone. She was walking on a road that's constantly under fire until she was spotted and reached by the robot. How did she know she was supposed to get on? Well, the soldiers attached a sheet to the drone here with the words, "Grandma, get in," written on it. So that's also another pretty good way to make use of such a drone. Ukrainian SPU drone. Well, let's stick with that. The drones were able to hit or attack several high-value targets in Crimea during a night operation. Among those affected were 3 Russian naval ships, as well as a MiG-31 at the Belbek airfield. Additionally, radar systems and air defense positions in the Sevastopol area were targeted. Command and technical facilities were also hit, putting pressure on sea targets, aircraft, sensors, and command structures at the same time, as in previous attacks, is intended to disrupt overall responsiveness. When radar, air defense, and infrastructure are hit simultaneously, gaps are created, and it is precisely at this moment that further attacks become possible. Details about the extent of the damage cannot currently be independently confirmed, so we will wait a few more hours. However, the choice of targets suggests a coordinated approach. On April 15th, a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone was able to locate a drone base of the Russian armed forces. In order to destroy the base with several drone pilots, the Ukrainians decided to send up a MiG-29. The building is quite large, so it makes sense. If they attacked with several drones, they wouldn't be able to hit all enemy forces or might not be able to hit them significantly. There's probably also a large amount of equipment hidden or stored in that building, and it could also be that artillery capabilities simply didn't have enough range in this area, which is why they always had a MiG-29 takeoff to attack the Russian position. The MiG-29 then carried out a hammer strike and hit the drone pilots. How many there were remains unknown, but that's completely irrelevant because this position was identified and attacked. That means the Ukrainians know that the Russians are there. So if anyone survived that, logically, they should just change their position. But apparently they didn't, because today the exact same building was attacked again, also because Russian drone operators were once again present here. Besides that, I also don't know why they chose the most conspicuous building in town to set up a hideout there. The Russian military blogger Fighter Bomber describes a drone attack deep in the Russian hinterland and provides the crucial details himself. According to him, the drones are said to have flown about 1,800 kilometers over Russian territory, with a flight time of 8 to 10 hours. And now comes the relevant point. He explicitly states that there were no interception measures along this route, no air defense, no visible attempts to stop the drones in any way along the way. This puts less emphasis on the range of the drones because 1,800 kilometers is already quite a distance, but rather on the fact that apparently there is no comprehensive air defense over this distance that can intercept drones here. Right now, this is like a land of milk and honey for the Ukrainians because they can build drones that are now capable of covering enormous distances. And apparently, they don't have any problem with it. They can simply fly around somewhere in Russia, since the air defense capabilities are no longer sufficient to combat the drones. Ukrainian drones spot a Russian hideout with several self-propelled howitzers, plus stolen washing machines and refrigerators inside. I assume that the soldiers have stored them there, and at some point want to take them back to Russia. You know that in Russia, many households don't have a toilet, washing machine, dishwasher, or general electrical appliances that we consider standard here. On the Russian side, that's actually a subject. Here, the ones they want to take from the occupied Ukraine. Of course, the storage will then be destroyed by drones. In general, let's take another quick look at the front. As I said, there is hardly any change at the front. I actually have nothing for you. Russia's goals still include Novorossiya, which they announced plans to establish a few months ago. That would basically include the other regions as well, like Dnipro and the neighboring areas, which are supposed to belong to Russia or for which they want to make a claim. And that would be this whole area here. They already need, just for the areas they've already claimed, like the Donbass, for example, an estimated several years before they can even reach them. There are estimates of 5 years just for the Donbass alone. That would basically be the distance from here to about there. That's about 50 kilometers as far as I can see. And for that, it's realistically estimated that it will last at least another 5 years. That means they will be able to capture an average of 10 kilometers per year. 10 kilometers per year. A snail could cover that distance several times, and armies from the past could cover that distance in just a few days as well. Here we see a tremendous loss of life just to gain a few meters of territory. And then we talk about ambitions and ambitious goals that are still 200 kilometers away from being reached. And I don't think that can be decided militarily or especially on the battlefield, like the Russian side thinks, realistically speaking. Thank you to all subscribers, channel members, and Algecruel. Special thanks to Commander Andrinic in Mayrufer. Please subscribe, like, and comment. See you in the next Situation Report.